We need the federal government to pause the implementation of the digital services tax. The DST is a bipartisan consensus in Washington. They are absolutely furious at us. I talk to Democrats, I talk to Republicans, and they are furious. They're furious with Canada over even considering what they view as an unfair tax on American companies. Putting aside the fact that they'll never support bringing in a new tax, no matter what it is, we cannot put millions of Canadian jobs in our historic economic partnership with the US at risk because of a stubborn refusal to listen to the concerns of our American friends. The federal government needs to pause the implementation of the digital services tax.
So there's Doug Ford in a pretty shocking break from character, actually opposing something Mark Carney's clown car liberals are putting forward. But he's wrong about one thing, guys. The digital services tax doesn't need to be simply paused, it needs to be scrapped entirely. Now look, liberals, I know lately your first instinct has been to rabidly support anything that Donald Trump opposes, but forget about Trump for just a minute, because the digital service tax is bad for Canada and people have been warning about it for a long time. Let's get into it. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Johnny Says So. Make sure you smash the like button and subscribe to the channel on your way in if you're not already. So today is the big day, guys. American tech companies are expected to pay up. That's right. If you're a company that does business online in Canada and you have a revenue of over $20 million, you are expected to pay a 3% tax going forward. Now, this isn't just a tax starting today. This is backdated to January of 2022. And it's not just American companies that are furious about this, but Donald Trump has actually stopped all trade negotiations with Canada. So did Donald Trump really nuke trade negotiations, or have the Americans been warning about this for a very long time? Well, let's take a look. So here we have an article from the CBC. U.S. escalates efforts to halt Ottawa's digital services tax. Office of the United States Trade Representative requests dispute settlement consultations with Ottawa. So is this referring to Donald Trump's latest meltdown about the digital services tax? Well, no, because this article was posted on August 30th, 2024. The federal government says it's in close contact with its American partners as the Biden administration escalates efforts to halt Canada's tax on large foreign digital service companies. Here we have an article from the Business Council of Canada. Canada's unilateral push for a digital service tax could sink its U.S. trade deal. Now, this is from the previous summer, dated July 31st, 2023. So obviously, guys, it's not just Donald Trump. Opposition to the digital services tax quite clearly has been bipartisan for years now. So I want to get into this very bizarre clip from CTV News where they outright say out loud that Mark Carney is using this as some sort of negotiation tactic or a bargaining chip. Let's check it out.
Let's now invite Julian Karagosian, former special advisor at the Ministry of Finance. Julian, good evening and thank you for your time. Great to see you again.
Great to see you, actually.
So do you think Canada could have waited a tad bit on this first payment set for Monday on digital tax, especially when both the Prime Minister and the President actually set 30 days of negotiations at the G7 summit?
I do think that, there are different means that we could have delayed the implementation. The Prime Minister has wide powers to do these things, as does the Finance Minister. I think this may also have been a negotiating tactic on the part of Prime Minister Carney. And there's also a separate...
So how's that going for us exactly? Let me know what you think down in the comments. Do you think this is smart, if that's indeed what he's doing?
Track dealing with digital services taxation at the OECD in Paris, so we could have delayed this and we could have pursued the international negotiations. So it leads me to think that this was obviously a tactic by Prime Minister Carney, putting a card on the table. Because, as President Trump said, he exaggerated, but he said they have more cards than we do, but we have some.
We have some, okay. But how much do you think Canada would have gained in the first place with this digital tax. I ask you this, can we sort of forego this in the larger scheme of things and where this trade war exists?
I do think we can forego it in the context of the larger trade war, given that we export, 75 to 80% of our exports go to the United States, and exports are 1/3 of our economy. In the grand scheme of things,
75 to 80% of our exports go to the United States. Now, this digital service tax doesn't seem to me like something we should be gambling on such a large part of our economy.
the tax is really a pittance. It's not much at all. But the tax is part of our domestic policy.
So he just called the revenue that would be generated from this a pittance, saying that it wouldn't amount to much at all in the grand scheme of things. The big problem with this, guys, is it runs counter to the narrative that they've been spinning about this for years. Now here's former Finance Minister Christia Freeland defending the implementation of the digital services tax.
Right now, a number of our allies and partners, including G7 countries like the UK, like France, like Italy, have a DST in place. They are collecting revenue from international tech giants, and that is revenue they are using to invest in their people. It is just not appropriate. It's not right for Canada to accept indefinitely being in a worse position than the UK, than France, than Italy.
Now, us being in a worse position than Italy, France, or the UK, now is that incumbent on tech companies to fix? Is it really? Could this not have anything to do with the government we've had for the last decade? Just a question I'm throwing out there.
It's just not okay. There's no justification for that. And I think we are all agreed as Canadians, we have such a crying need for investment in so many things in our country, whether it is housing or making life more affordable or investing in productivity and growth. And we also know that we need to make those investments in a fiscally responsible way, because we want interest rates to keep on coming down. So we need revenue for those investments. And in the current situation, Canada is worse off from some of our allies who are not facing any retaliation. That's just not fair. It's just not okay for Canada and Canadians. It's not in the national interest.
So this clip is less than a year old, but I gotta say that those words did not age very well, given the risk that the digital service tax is currently putting us in. And I also got to say, it's very rich of Christia Freeland to talk about fiscal responsibility when that is how she lost her job, is not being fiscally responsible and going way, way over budget. Now let's take a look at former Prime Minister Justin Trudeau talking about how great the digital service tax is going to be for Canada.
In English on the digital services tax. Back in 2020, we talked about how important it was to make sure that web giants and large multinationals who work on the internet, like Amazon and others, pay their fair share of taxes for the work they do and the operations they have here in Canada. This is something in line with what a number of other countries, including the UK and France, have already done. And then we agreed to put a pause on the bringing in of that tax while the OECD and the United States and other countries around the world worked on a global regime to make sure that it was fair everywhere.
No, they put a pause on it because they knew that the Americans would eat our lunch. Now, it doesn't matter if it's going to be Trump or Biden. It was bad policy, and they knew it.
Supposed to be done by the end of 2023. Unfortunately, that has not progressed, and therefore we're keeping with our commitment to make sure that the largest multinationals on the internet pay their fair share of taxes in Canada, and we're going to move forward with the digital services tax. We're not looking to fight with the United States. We're going to continue to work with them and in reasonable ways, but Canadians can understand that the largest, most successful internet companies need to pay their fair share of taxes in Canada.
So the largest internet companies need to pay their fair share in taxes. So that doesn't sound like a pittance to me, now does it? So it's not just my opinion that Mark Carney is making a huge mistake by implementing the failed policies of Justin Trudeau and Christia Freeland. This article from the Canadian Chamber of Commerce does a great job breaking down just how bad this is going to be for Canadians going forward. Costing you more. 5 ways the digital service tax will impact you. Now, I'm not going to read the entire thing. I just want to go through the points very quickly, but the last one is the most important. Here's how the tax will impact you. Number 1, products and services you rely on will cost more. Now, this is pretty self-explanatory. Obviously, the tech companies aren't just going to eat this cost, whether it be, Amazon, Uber Eats, any of that stuff, guys. They're going to add 3% directly to your bill. And this is pretty ridiculous considering a lot of these services we already pay GST on anyways. This is a tax on a tax. And make no mistake, whether or not this is a large amount of revenue for the government or not, it's still a shameless cash grab by the Liberals. Number 2, customer loyalty programs will do less. 3, government overhead will increase. Number 4, and this is the most important, Canadian exports will be at risk. The United States, our biggest trading partner, is strongly opposed to unilateral digital taxes like the DST. In fact, upon the Canadian government announcing its intention to implement the tax, Washington expressed its concerns and raised the possibility of responding with retaliatory measures and retribution. When France implemented a DST, the United States announced they would impose 25% tariffs on products unrelated to digital services, ranging from champagne and cheese to handbags and perfumes. Now, this runs contrary to what Christia Freeland just said about how Canada is the only one receiving retaliatory measures, which couldn't be further from the truth. Starting in January 2021, if imposed, similar retaliatory tariffs in Canada could result in huge price increases for Canadian goods that are exported to the United States, our main trading partner, and empty shelves in Canada as businesses with cross-border manufacturing and supply chains struggle to produce products amid the tariffs. Now look at where we are today, guys. This has come true tenfold. So there you have it, guys. Yet another example of how elbows up has let us all down, big time. And unfortunately, I'm just not seeing or hearing a lot of opposition to this from the Conservative Party of Canada. Perhaps all of our elected representatives are busy enjoying their summer vacation. But I think it's important, now more than ever, to write your MPs and let them know how you feel about the digital services tax if you're opposed to it. And that's my show for tonight, guys. Let me know what you think down in the comments. And as always, smash the like button, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.